Today we will be discussing recipe formulation techniques. A great way to be sure that your recipe formulation is consistent is to keep your raw materials in weight measurements as opposed to volumetric. Today we will be taking 5 samples of flour using the same volumetric cup measure, and we're going to observe the differences that occur when we do so. First, it's important to make sure we have all the supplies that we're going to need.
Shown here is the scale that we will be using, which has been properly balanced by adjusting the height of the legs on the scale. You will also see the plexiglass scale cover. The purpose of a scale cover is to protect the material being weighed from wind and accidents, such as spills that can occur on the workstation. Next, we have our raw material, which is all-purpose flour. Then, you will see the 5 weigh dishes that we will be using to tare our scale and hold the raw material for a consistent measurement. It's important to have weigh dishes, as you should never be putting any raw materials directly onto your scale. We also have a leveler, which can be any tool with a flat edge to even out the measurements being taken. The back of a knife works great. Finally, we have a standard volumetric cup measure that will be used for each flour sample measurement. Prior to taking each individual measurement, you must first tare the scale. Taring the scale eliminates the weight added by the weigh dish, leaving only the weight of the raw material being measured. To tare the scale, place the empty weigh dish on the scale and press the tare or 0 button that will be located on the face of the scale.
It's now time to weigh our 5 flour samples.
Notice how the weigh dish is completely empty of any material when taring the scale. The weigh dish is placed on the scale, and I press the tare button to ensure that the scale now says 0. To take the flour measurement, notice how I am lightly scooping the flour into the cup measure. The flour is not packed down, but instead, excess is left at the top. Then, the leveler is used to even out the flour and ensure that the cup measure is filled completely to the top with no excess. Be sure that the value on the scale has stopped changing prior to writing down your measurement. The first flour measurement weighs 124.74 grams. We've repeated these steps 4 times and now have our 5 flour sample weights.
As we can see, we are presented with a small inconsistency with each volumetric measurement. These small inconsistencies come into play when scaling your product batch size. If you're scaling up your product batch size and the recipe now calls for 10 cups of flour, you are presented with 10 opportunities for inconsistency.
Some volumetric inconsistencies are greater than others. For example, when measuring an ingredient such as diced carrots, the cut pieces will not fill the cup measurer in a uniform manner. The excess space that is left from each measurement will be different, making the inconsistencies even more apparent.
After spending time perfecting your recipe, it's important to be sure that you're keeping it consistent for your consumers.
If your recipe is already written in volumetric measurements, don't worry. Converting your recipe to weight measurements is done simply by calculating an average measurement from 5 samples of that raw material. To calculate the average weight of your raw material, start by taking 5 volumetric measurements and record their weights as we just did. You will then take the sum of the samples by adding their weights together. The sum is then divided by the number of samples, which in this case is 5. When the weights of the samples measured were added together, the sum was calculated to be 627.44. The sum is then divided by 5, as there were 5 flour samples taken and used in this calculation. The average weight of 1 cup of flour was calculated to be 125.49 grams. Repeat these steps with each raw material included in your recipe until you have calculated and recorded the average weight for each. The average values are now your standard recipe weights. In this video, we learned how to weigh raw materials properly using scale techniques and appropriate equipment. The purpose of this video was to also highlight the importance of weight measurements for consistency and other future factors of product development. Having your recipe written in weight measurements will make it suitable for future calculations such as cost calculations, ingredient statements, percent daily value calculations, and of course, recipe formulation.
Thanks for joining us today, and good luck with your recipe formulation.